Hey, welcome to Y sorting with a hint of Z-index. Maybe you've run into an issue where Godot isn't rendering your character properly. How can you properly render a character in front of a tree, a building in front of a character? If you're interested in making a 2D game, you need to understand this rendering technique that I'm going to go over. We'll start by going over two very important node properties and finish up by going over some different scene types I recommend constructing. Let's go. First, let's go over the scene. I have a control node on top, and then I have a texture rect, a texture button, and a sprite 2D. The reason I went with these three things is because they're popular control nodes and node 2Ds that have this texture property inside. And when we're talking about rendering order, we need to have a texture. Simple things first. Let's see how these textures interact with each other if we drag them over one another. I'm going to start with this tree right here. We're going to notice that the position for this tree is 0. It's the first child in this scene tree. And if I press Alt and drag it over, you're going to notice that it goes behind the tree, behind the character. If we grab tree number 2, it's going to go over the tree on the left, the first one, but it's going to go behind the second one. And if we grab the character, it's going to go above both of them. And the reason for this is because all three of these textures are at z-index of 0, which means they're basically on the same layer. They can interact with each other. And if they're on the same z-index, then the scene tree hierarchy matters the most. The first one renders below anything after it. So now let's change the z-index for the first tree. We're going to change it to 1. And when we do this, we're basically putting this tree in another layer. So anything that has a smaller z-index or a different z-index isn't going to be able to interact with this. So if we grab this tree and drag it along, we're going to see that this tree renders on top of everything we put it on. Likewise, if we change tree 2's z-index to 1, now it's always going to be drawn on top of the character, who's the only one that has z-index of 0. But if we drag it over this first tree, it's going to be drawn on top of it because the z-index for this first one is 1. The second one is also 1. So then we're going to use the scene tree order. Child 0, child 1. Whoever is later in the tree gets drawn on top. So now let's get to the real deal. Let me move this tree over something like this, and then this tree number 2, something like this in front of it, and then the character. I'm going to change the character to a z-index of 2, so now it's in front of everything. The thing is, even if this was how we want our scene to kind of look, we can't have a fixed z-index like this. We want the character to be able to go behind these trees. Z-index might be good to separate stuff from one another, but if you've got a character in an environment, you want to have everything on the same z-index and use Y sorting. So let's go back to all the trees. Let's change the z-index to 0, to 0, to 0. Now everything is on the same layer. From here, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the parent, and we're going to look at ordering, and we're going to look for this Y sort enabled feature, and we're going to toggle it on. When we set this property to true, basically a Y sort is enabled for the children. And what that does is instead of going off of the scene tree hierarchy, we're going to be using the Y position instead. Starting with the first tree, let's check out the Y positions that these nodes have. I'm going to click this, and then I'm going to go over to the transform, and we're going to see the position right here. It's going to be 30 pixels. Tree number 2 has a Y position of 26, and the sprite has a Y position of 66. Alright, so with Y sort enabled, the one with the highest Y will always be drawn up. I'm going to drag this, try to keep 66-ish, and you're going to notice that it's always going to be drawn on top. Just like before, right? But this time we have Y sort enabled. So let's take a look at the two trees then. I think it'll be a little bit easier to see how the Y sorting works. So we're going to notice that the Y position for this is 26. This one is 30. So I'm going to go 28, 29, and then I'm going to try to bring it over. Oh, you're going to notice that around just at what the Y position is, if I go a little bit up, then I'll be on top. Otherwise, the tree will be on the bottom. Right? That's basically how Y sorting works. Now we want to kind of use this to our advantage, right? Already we can kind of see that the sprite 2D brings in something different, and it's especially apparent when we actually take a look at where these land. I'm going to reset the position. or actually the Y position to just 0. Reset the Y position to 0. And for this one as well, I'm going to reset the Y position to 0. Okay, so this is basically, hey, if we move this 1 pixel down, it's going to be rendered up. This is the kind of deal we're working with. That's a bit of a problem. So now you're going to be thinking like, okay, how do we use this then? We probably want to standardize where the lowest point of our textures is always going to be. Right now we can tell that the origin of this texture is going to be in the top left. Ideally, we probably want it centered up on the middle. And for this one, because it's a node 2D, it's centered up in the center of the sprite. Not particularly useful. I don't really like this. So I really don't often do something like this right here. Before I move on from the Sprite 2D animated Sprite 2D slander, there is a very good use case for using Sprite 2Ds. But if what you're using this for is to show static pictures, static textures, if you're not using the animation properties such as the frames, the H-frames, V-frames, then I think you're better off using TextureX. But if you are using this, then you probably do want to use the Sprite 2D or the animated Sprite 2D. And what you want to do here is you want to use the offset property right here. So let's see how this works. 10, 20, 33. You get what I'm saying. You do something like this to manipulate the position that you want. So before I jump into the scenes that you can use, I want to say that the way you want to position your pictures, your textures is all up to you. As long as you're using one reference point that works for you, it probably works, right? For me, it's the simplest to always look at these textures individually for what they are. For example, this tree is defined by this boundary, this one is defined by this one is defined by this one. And for me, I want all of these, the Y position to start at 0 at the lowest point. And so that's kind of how I want to build my scenes. So with that in mind, I'm going to go create a new scene, user interface, and I'm going to throw in a texture rect. And then I'm going to use this icon.svg file, just toss it in, and it's going to come out like this, right? And what I want to do is I want to use the anchor preset. I'm using a green node with a green node, so I can use anchors freely. So what I want to do with this control node up here, I want to just shrink it down to a single point, and then use the anchor preset on the child to this one, center bottom. And what that's going to do is it's going to line me up just like this. I don't really have to do anything else. I'm going to save this in my scenes folder. I'm going to call this Godot picture. And for good measure, I'm just going to change that here just to be all good. And now I'm going to go here, select my parent, instantiate child scene, Godot picture. And now this will come in as its own scene, and it will have a Y position of 0. And I think this is one of the best ways to go about creating assets that you're going to use, parts and pieces of your environment. Something like this where you can easily control what the Y position is. The nicest thing about having a control on top is that you get to leverage anchors in general. So I really do prefer using green nodes, green and green. But if you wanted to do something like a 2D, node 2D, I don't think I would ever do something just like node 2D. I think I probably have a reason to use this. So the reason for me would be character body 2D. Oh my god, I did it again. The reason for me would be character body 2D. This one, right? It provides velocity. And so inside here, I would have a sprite 2D, just like we did before. And so I think this is probably the only case where I actually use something like this. If I can, I would probably rather have a control node on top, just because anchor presets. If you had something in here, you would still line it up as you can. And then once you bring it in, it'll be based on the Y position that you give it inside this scene. So you do all your management inside the scene, and then when you bring it over, it's going to have that Y position that you want, and then you can sort it in your scene appropriately. I went ahead and put this scene together. Let me show you the tree scene real quick. It looks like this. Tree control node brought down to a point, texture rect, using the center bottom preset. And then for the player, it's the character body 2D that I was talking about. And then with the sprite 2D just like this, all so that I can finally move my character around and get the Y sorting to work properly. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. Was this tutorial a little bit too basic? Are you guys pretty advanced? If you have something you want me to cover, just let me know as well. Thank you to all my channel members. It really means so much to me. The reason I can keep making content is because of your support. I appreciate it a lot. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.